Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by Easy Generator, the e-learning authoring tool that lets anyone in your company create company-specific training at scale. Your sales team knows your product, your legal team knows compliance, your HR team knows onboarding. And with Easy Generator, they can all easily share that knowledge by creating engaging e-learning. Empower your experts to share what they know fast. Learn more at easygenerator.com. Now that we've paid the bills, we can get to meeting our guest today. Joining me, we have Dr. Will Thalheimer, a learning scientist who translates research into practice. He's a founder of Work Learning Research. He's known for debunking learning myths, helping organizations build more effective training. He's an author of several books, including most recently, The CEO's Guide to Training, eLearning and Work, Reshaping Learning into a Competitive Advantage. And Will brings a lot of science to learning. That's really what we know Will, I think, most for, is a lot of what he does and a lot of what he publishes is based on data. So we're really excited to have Will join us today. Will, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Nolan. It's great to be here.
So let's get right into it. Before we talk about the book or some of these other concepts that we wanted to introduce, let's learn a little bit more about you, Will. I mean, you've been in this space and you've been, a beacon in this space for quite a while, but you didn't start there. What was your origin story into learning and development?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, you're taking me back. I was actually in business school. I was an MBA student, Drexel University in Philadelphia. And I was taking the business courses and they were fine, but they didn't feed my soul, if you will. And so I poked around the rest of the university and I found this 4-course sequence on instructional design. And I got really fascinated. And I took that sequence and then it was time for me to graduate, and I'd been working on, for my master's project, I was building simulations as part of that. And so I was paging through Training Magazine. I kind of was thinking, it'd be great to sort of combine simulations with my business background now. And there it was on the page, the Strategic Management Group, World Leaders in Business Simulation. And so I said, oh my gosh, that's who I want to work for. Where are they located? They were 4 blocks from my house.
Oh my word.
Yeah. So I put on my one business suit, the one my dad helped me buy from Brooks Brothers. I went down there the next day and I said, I want to work for you guys. And, this was a small little company. Nobody had ever done that before. So they said, well, we're busy today. Can you come back tomorrow? I went back the next day. I got a job, instructional design. We were famous for building simulations. So I started out, we built an MBA in a box first, and then I got involved in building simulations, leadership simulations. And I was a project manager, et cetera. Had a lot of fun with that. So that's how I got into the field. Eventually, I decided I need to go back to school again and get a PhD in human learning and cognition. And there we go. That's sort of the origin.
What keeps you fascinated in this space? I mean, getting into it is one thing, but then sticking in it for so long is a different story altogether.
Well, I guess I'll answer that on 2 levels. One is, I think we do important work. I think the L&D field, we help people in their current jobs. We help them in their careers, with their confidence, their sense of identity. That can have ripple effects into their family finances, into the community. So we do important work. We also help the organizations that we work for be more competitive. So that's one reason that keeps me going. But the other is I just love doing this work. I love looking at the research, figuring things out. I love teaching workshops, doing speaking gigs. I'm really, if I could do anything, if somebody paid me just to do research and write books and do occasional speaking, I would love to do that. So building stuff that's research-based, that's going to be effective, that helps other people, just it gets me up in the morning every day. So
Well, that's good. I mean, it's nice when your passion can meet your paycheck.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work out that way. So I'm happy to hear that it is for you, and that's probably why you've been on to be so successful as most people have. Speaking of, you said if I had unlimited time, you had some time on your hands, or maybe you had no time and you still wrote the book anyways. You recently wrote this book, CEO's Guide to Training, E-Learning and Work, Reshaping Learning into Competitive Advantage. I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Yeah, there it is. There it is on the screen. Um, Talk to me a little bit about the origin of that book and why you wanted to write it. And most of the other books are really, I would call them more like learning focused versus CEO driven, or I would say, maybe this is a very CEO driven one. What drew you down that path?
Well, um, I've been in the field a long time. A couple months ago, it was 40 years in the field.
Wow, congratulations.
So, so I've seen a lot of stuff, and one of sort of the perennial issues we have is we in L&D don't feel we have a seat at the table. We don't feel we have good support from senior leaders. They don't really understand our work,
Mhm.
which is just fine. It's really not their job to understand it. It's not their main job. They should be focused on operations, finance, marketing. But at the same time, I've always felt that if we could be more empowered, and the subtitle of the book is actually Empowering Learning for a Competitive Advantage.
Mhm.
And the idea is that if we can talk to CEOs and senior leaders and explain the things that we can do, if we can explain to them, well, let me put it this way. I write the book as if I'm writing to a CEO.
Hmm.
And sometimes I tell the CEO, I say, hey, there's a ton of research that shows that training is really effective. It helps the bottom line. Companies that do more training have more profits. But at other times I tell them, hey, listen, CEO, I got to tell you that the data we give you is crap data.
Hmm.
It's not very good. It's not very useful. And you could help us out by demanding better data from us. And I talk about the problems with it. I think in the book, to quote myself, I think in the book I say something like, um, poor learning evaluation is the root of all evil in learning and development. But the book is written, it's got 50 short chapters. Then if you want, you can go into the back and read, details, the research, et cetera. But the idea is that the book is not just for senior leaders. It's also for us. We need to understand how to partner with them, how to create competitive advantage. There's a whole bunch of things that we can do to create competitive advantage for our organizations. If we do that, we're being more effective, and we're also beginning to talk the language of the business. We talk about things like ROI, and we do these subjective ROI analyses. The senior leaders look through that and they get skeptical. But we talk about competitive advantage and how we can actually help. Then we have an in. We have a way to create that partnership.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting perspective to have a book written to the CEO, but obviously, like as right when you said that, I was like, well, that's obviously very helpful then for the L&D people as well to understand how do we talk to them. What are the things that we should request, and you rarely hear that side of the story from the CEO back, right? It is like you said, it's how do we get a seat at the table? How do we connect to the CEO, but not how does a CEO connect back to learning and how can they drive the most out of their organization? And I think now, it's a very timely book. I think writing a book right now is a really tough thing to do because the world is changing so quickly. So like, how do you find that evergreen content that's gonna withstand a month, let alone a year? But this idea of L&D and learning being the competitive advantage, I think is so true. I just had just today, oddly enough, I just posted a video from a gentleman. He's the head of one of the heads of learning at this company called RisePoint, and he had said, I think L&D stands the most to gain in these next couple of years because talent is the great resource that everybody's going to need. Now that's always been the case, but the difference is, we've been masked with this idea of technology being our competitive advantage, which it is, and it can be. But AI is enabling it. If we look at the transformations it's making in learning, great. But if we look at the transformations it's making in tech, I met a gentleman who had bought and sold several different LMS companies, and he said, I was at a startup community and these guys came out there and said, we've been working for 3 years at Stanford and created this, app. And he turned to his buddy and said, I feel so bad for them. I could use AI to develop that in 3 weeks. And
Yeah,
so,
right.
so tech is actually getting leveled by adoption of AI. And so what really becomes something that's harder to adopt, right? Because anybody can go buy Claude or ChatGPT or whatever and start developing tools and doing this, that, and the other. But you can't develop people like that. You can't just go buy a person or change the culture of your company or empower skill development. These are all very long-term gains you have to invest in early.
Yeah, and there's some fundamental things. I do have a chapter on AI in the book, and I got a couple of AI people to look at it, and one of them did say, "This is good, Will. This will be evergreen." So that's good. But let me make this clear for people. So I'm a learning science guy. I've spent years translating this, research on learning, memory, instruction, and performance from the top tier scientific journals. And so I'll use this as an example of how to create a competitive advantage. So in the book, I give 4 examples of learning research areas. So retrieval practice, the spacing effect, context alignment, and feedback, just 4 of many. And I say, if you just do these 4 things, and looking at the research, you're almost guaranteed to get 100% improvement in your learning results. Now think about that. That's doubling your learning results. So imagine you have 2 learning teams. You've got one that's using the learning sciences and getting double the results. You've got another that's not using the learning science, just doing the normal stuff. That one learning team is creating a competitive advantage compared to the other one. And there's lots of things like that. You mentioned AI. So one of the things in the book I say, here's another way to create a competitive advantage. Don't just teach in silos. Don't just teach in courses. If you have some things that are so important to your, the strategy of your company, to your competitive advantage, your sustainability, don't just teach that in one course. So for example, values, your company's values, presumably they're important. So don't just teach them in an onboarding course and then never talk to them again. Instead, create scenarios in many of your courses that touch on the content of the course, but also that have a values element to them. And then you're spacing repetitions over time. You're keeping this values of the company top of mind, number one. You're inculcating them in the real decisions that people have to make. And so that spacing of repetitions over time is one of the most important things we can do to create long-term remembering, but it's also keeping them top of mind. So another thing, AI. So yeah, we can have a course on prompt engineering or advanced prompt engineering or AI, other AI things. But why not instead use this spacing effect, this idea, the spaced repetitions, to put mini AI projects in many of your courses. That gives that spacing effect. It makes it more real in the authentic work. If you do that and your competitors are not doing that, you're creating a massive competitive advantage for your company on something really important, AI implementation, which we know is critical to most companies now.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was speaking at a training industry event, and I was putting together some stats, and I saw this stat, and I was like, I don't know if that can be right. And it was by MIT Sloan. I forget the gentleman's name. He's a writer for them, but he wrote Blue Ocean Strategy, which is the best-selling business book. And he said like 95% of AI pilots fail to show their revenue goals. And it was so funny because I got an email forwarded to me today by our CEO saying, we need to use more stats like this. And the stat was 95%. So like it's going around a lot, but I think that there's something, really to that. And I think the reason a lot of these things, fail, like you mentioned, is it's like, it's a shout into the wind, right? We are being inundated with messages about like all different kinds of things, and spaced repetition is a way to make sure that they eventually get that, and then they build on their knowledge every little bit and every little way. And it's very meta to think this way, but like you can use AI to do that, to get that seated in ways that you couldn't. I talked to a lot of leaders about how to look at your budget with AI. What should you be projecting back to your business? Should you just be saying, yeah, I'm going to cut my cost? I said, if you want to tell them that, you can tell them that. But what you might want to do is say, like, I'm poised to make a huge impact on business this year. I used to only be able to create one 15-minute e-learning course, but now I can create, for every 15-minute learning course, I can also create a video. I can also create a podcast. I can also create an infographic. And I can do all 4 of those things in a quarter of the time. So I'll be able to get out 10 times more content, 10 times quicker, whatever it is. So there's a lot of things that AI is helping do that, as you adopt AI, it can help you. You can use AI to help adopt AI, I guess, is what I'm getting at there. So that's cool. In your book, I like that you also have taken, I forget how many you said, but these very practical, like, just do this. Like, here's things, just go and do them, because I think a lot of times, especially now, people are hungry for that. Like, advice, like, just, can you please lay it out for me? What made you think that was important versus just saying so high level?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It just seems obvious, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we in L&D, we're doing work.
yeah.
We want to be maximally effective. We want our learners to pay attention. Well, first of all, we want to give them good content, not bad content. So we want to vet that, figure out a way to, make sure it's research-based or evidence-based or whatever. Then we want to make sure the learners pay attention. And that's not enough. We can't just entertain them. We want to have them pay attention in a way that helps them learn. My doctoral dissertation advisor, the late great Ernie Rothkopf, had this great term that he coined, methemogenic, which means give birth to learning. And the idea was there's not enough to get people to pay attention. You have to get them to pay attention and think about the content in a way that helps them learn. We need to do that. Then we need to make sure they comprehended things fully. Then we need to make sure they're motivated to apply. Then we have to make sure that they are going to remember. A lot of us don't think about this, but it's not good enough to create learning. We actually have to create remembering. When people go into their performance situation, we want that performance situation, the stimuli in that environment to trigger their thoughts so they remember what they learned, so they use it, so they can apply what they've learned. So you can see this causal pathway from learning to performance. There's a lot of complexity in that. And, in the old days, and sometimes too much today, we still think our job is to create content and broadcast it to people. We know that's not good enough. So I just was trying to, based on my background experience with the learning sciences and practical, I've been in this field for a damn long time. I just wanted to create a whole list of things that we can do to create competitive advantage. And I wanted to tell senior leaders what we're doing well now, what we in L&D are not doing well, so they can help fix it. But also, this book was not just for CEOs. The book is really for learning folks as well, for 2 reasons. One, there's a lot of content in there they can use to say, hey, we could do this to create a competitive advantage. And number 2, the way I write to the CEOs is as if we are worthy. And one of the things in the L&D space is that sometimes we act subservient.
Yeah.
And, obviously we want to give people respect, everyone respect, but at the same time, there's certain practices we have and knowledge and wisdom. And there's this whole group of learning sciences, the performance sciences and solutions and practices and models that we have, that's good stuff. And we shouldn't back away from good practice. So in the book, I try to, focus on the things that we can do to make ourselves really effective. and also at the same time sending a message to senior people, hey, here's what we're doing that's not good enough. You can help us, push us, and here's some things we're doing really well you might not know about.
Yeah, that's great. And something you touched on that I'd like to just, learn a little bit more about it. A lot of what we talk about in the podcast and a lot of people that come on, they're talking about all the things we do well or things that we should do well. It's rare that we kind of talk about our mistakes and, maybe these are things that we shouldn't have done. What are some of those things, that would come to mind when you're like, gosh, we're just not really doing that good of a job of this thing? What comes to mind for you?
Well, I mean, people ask me what's the number one problem. Well, the number one problem we try to broadcast information. We're just trying to teach too many things. You
Uh,
know, the sort of thought experiment I like to use is, okay, would you rather teach 100 things and have people remember 10 of them, or teach 50 things and have people remember 20 of them?
huh.
And you want you want them to be able to use more, right? So 20 is better. And the reason that metaphor works, or that thought experiment works, is because if you just teach a whole bunch of stuff, you're not giving people the learning supports. You're not giving them realistic practice. You're not giving them repetitions. You're not giving them spaced repetitions. You're not giving them time for reflection. You're just blowing stuff at them. So that's not good. We can't do that. Another thing we do, we don't like to be order takers, and yet we don't have intake processes that help remind ourselves and our stakeholders about like some important things, like, hey, maybe this isn't a training problem. So there's a chapter in the book where I have a list, like a intake process. So if somebody asks for a course, you say, great, let us help. And there's questions. Well, what kind of thing are you envisioning? Is it an e-learning? So you get them to, you meet them where they are first. And then you say, well, if this training is going to be effective, what other supports might we need? Management support, incentives, helping people overcome obstacles, resources. What else is going to be needed to make this effective? And that gets them thinking, oh, there's these other things. In fact, maybe it's not a training problem. So we can nudge people. We can nudge our stakeholders and ourselves to think about things, so we're not just order takers. So just one example.
Yeah, and it's interesting, this idea of kind of just being a broadcaster. I was talking to somebody recently, and maybe you would have a thought on this too, of how AI is really going to put that to the test of what type of how are we going to envision learning in the future. I think for the next 2-3 years, a lot of us are envisioning AI is going to help us do a better job of producing the same type of content that we have in the past. But eventually there will be, and throughout that, we will start realizing, well, AI will create a brand new series of training programs that did not exist, because now that we can do this, we don't need that. We don't need a video when we can have a bot that just tells them, what the price list is, or we don't need this. We can just have this. How far out do you think we are? And again, it's a total hypothesis, but like, how do you see that changing over time?
Well, I'm really interested in AI. I'm not an expert. I've gone to several conferences on it. I've read some books. I played around with it myself. My first thing I'll say is that nobody's good at predicting the future. Right? Not even Nostradamus was good at predicting the future. And so it's really hard to tell where we're going to be. I do think there's a lot of opportunities out there, and I think what we should do is have a sort of experimental mindset, try
Yeah.
some stuff out. We have to be careful. There are dangers, right? Everybody says now, okay, well, you got to have a human in there somewhere to check things out. And,
Yeah.
and I find that in my work, I got AI to help me with a bunch of things, but sometimes I go, what the hell? This is not good enough. Um, and so I don't know what it's going to mean. Certainly, with it, when there's any new technology, we always try to do the same things we were doing better or faster,
Yeah.
right? So, like you said, but then I don't know what is it going to be. We don't know for sure. Like there's There's ideas about having AI. Well, one word is co-pilot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, to sit alongside us as we work. Well, yeah, maybe, but maybe, who knows? Maybe people will rise up and say, hey, I don't want some damn AI observing me all the time. I don't want it taking my job, So I think, we don't know what the body politic is going to do with some of this. So I think we should all be a little circumspect. Somebody tells you they know the future of AI, you should go, mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day, and I never remember which book it's in. It's either Sapien or Brief History of Nearly Everything, where the author talks about, every new revolution has an intended purpose and then an outcome. And the intended purpose is always make our lives better. Traditionally, any innovation is, hey, make our lives better, make our lives easier. And for us mere mortals, that's like make food easier to come by, give us more time to do the things we like to do. Basic things. But every single time it ends up not doing that. Every single time, you look at, we went for, the agricultural revolution. You went from eating 17 different types of food throughout your day to eating corn because that's the only crop that you grew was corn.
Yeah.
And then, I tell people a much more recent example, right, is email. It's like, well, gosh, you can just envision, if I had to send a note to somebody, I had to write it out by hand or type it, I guess, but then mail it, and go to the post office. And oh my gosh, think of the money I'm going to save just in postage and paper and time. I'm going to have so much time to do whatever I need to do. Does anybody feel like they had, and then email hit your phone and you thought the same thing? Does anybody feel like they actually have more time? Does anybody? No, because the work now expects you to respond faster. You can't, if somebody sends you an email, you can't wait 3 days to respond. You have to respond within 3 hours, or they wonder if you're working at all. So you mentioned, the human pushback. That is the real, I think, interesting component of this is will the humans revolt, right? Because in the moment, as of when we're filming this, which is October 29th, who was it? Amazon just laid off like 35,000 employees. UPS has laid off 10,000, and they were saying, AI is helping us. We were a little bit bloated, but AI has helped us do this, which really means that, and I'm not expecting that Amazon is going to forecast a shrink in revenue. So what does that mean? That means that these employees are going to have to do more, create more value with the fewer employees. Are those employees going to get paid X amount more? History tells us no, but it's interesting to see, because we are at such a point now where AI is helping us do so much more. Some organizations are taking that to mean, well, we don't need that many people then. But then we all know the new normal is going to be, well, now I expect every Nolan to do 10x what he did because he should use AI. So it's a really interesting to see what the pushback will be.
Yeah. Yeah. All those Amazon employees will be, buying their clothes on Etsy or something from now on. I don't know. Yeah. Well, so one of the things I'm doing with AI is I'm trying to investigate, because learning evaluation is one of my things. I'm trying to investigate, and I've got some other people working with me on this. How can we use AI in learning evaluation? So one of the things that's obvious is you try to solve problems that you've always had. So one problem we've always had is when you give a learner survey, you've got choice questions, right, where they have to choose an answer. You give them an options. But we also got these open-ended comment questions. So that's always been a pain. How do you get 100 people making comments, so you get AI to process it. Hey, what are the patterns in here? You might feed it some structure around a prompt to get it to focus on certain things, the kind of things they're going to say. So that's fairly easy, but there's probably, there's probably other things that I haven't thought about yet that we can use AI for. Let's wait to the near future to find out what those things are.
Yeah, interesting. So let's now that we've full circled the AI bandwagon, let's get back to kind of some of the more core concepts. What are and in this book, and I'm sure that a lot of what you tried to do, you mentioned, I wanted to make evergreen material in here, and give specific advice. What are some of those other areas where you think that learning needs to invest in more than they have been today, because it will value that CEO? Like, or I guess put a different way, what do you feel CEOs are valuing the most from their learning leaders today?
From what I've heard, they they well, here's what we tell them. We tell them how many people have been trained, how many training hours. We might even report on our smile sheet ratings. Oh, we have 4.5s on average. No, I mean, you and I both know that's a bunch of BS. I mean, one of the things that got me started looking at learning evaluation was there's a bunch of science on this that shows that smile sheets, traditional smile sheets with Likert scales, numeric scales, are virtually uncorrelated with learning results. So you get high marks, you could have a good course, you get low marks, or you could have, if you get high marks, you could have a good course, but equally likely a bad course. You get low marks, you could have a poorly designed workshop, equally likely a well-designed workshop. A lot of what we're doing is just not working that well. So learner surveys is a good example. This is one of the things I tell CEOs. In fact, of those 50 chapters in the book, I think 6 of them relate to learning evaluation because I think it's so important. Why is it so important? Because it's the way we get feedback. It's the way we make things better. If we don't create feedback loops, we can't create continuous cycles of improvement. And if we're just using poorly designed learner surveys, we're getting bad information. And when you get bad information, you're going to make bad decisions. You're not trying to make bad decisions, but if you don't have the data that's really meaningful, then how can you help but make bad decisions? So one of the things I that tell these CEOs is, hey, right now we're giving you crap data, but we can do better. We can do a lot better. I talk about LTEM, the Learning Transfer Evaluation Model, which I published in 2018, and there's a new version as of last year. It is a 8-tier model that reminds us that some things aren't good enough to validate learning, like attendance, completion rates, learner activity. Learners can be active, they can complete, but maybe they're not learning. Maybe they're learning the wrong thing. Maybe they become demotivated. So, the LTEM says, hey, don't do these. These things are not good enough. Learner surveys are another thing. They're sort of mediocre. You can write a good one. I've written a book on how to write a better learner survey. Book is titled Performance Focused Learner Surveys. I don't think our surveys are perfect, but I do think they can be a lot better, and that gives us some information. But we should be going beyond that. We should be measuring foundational knowledge that's helps learners make better decisions, but also decisions. We teach people something, they shouldn't just have knowledge. They should be able to make better decisions and take better actions. So that's tier 4, 5, and 6 is knowledge, decision-making, and task performance. And that brings learning wisdom back into the learning evaluation space. The dominant model we've all followed for many years is the Kirkpatrick model, or the Kirkpatrick-Cassell model, as I like to call it, because Raymond Cassell actually created the 4-level idea, and then Donald Kirkpatrick put the labels on it and popularized it. Both gentlemen deserve credit. But the Kirkpatrick model puts learning all in level 2. And what do we measure there? Well, we could measure the regurgitation of trivia, or the recall or recognition of meaningless information, but also meaningful information, but also decision-making, task performance skills that's a wide continuum from trivia to skills.
Mm-hmm.
What do we typically do? We look at the Kirkpatrick model. We go, we need a level 2. Let's do a knowledge check. And unfortunately, those are easy to create, but not that meaningful. We can measure important knowledge, but oftentimes we measure definitions, terminology, really low-level things where we design poorly designed questions. But why not measure whether people can make decisions? Give them scenarios. What's the best decision here? Or have them actually perform tasks and measure that as well. So if we measure better, we're going to get better information that will help us in L&D make better decisions. When we make better decisions about our learning designs, we're going to be more effective. So it's one of the most important things we can do. It's one of the least funded things that we do.
Yeah.
And we waste a lot of money trying to prove that we're doing good work, when that money would be better spent trying to improve what we're doing.
So I got into a mini soapbox when somebody posted something on LinkedIn about the effectiveness of Kirkpatrick and 4 models and this, that, and the other. And it was published as a white paper, and I was reading it, and I said, okay, let's look at this research report, I guess is what it was published as. And I was like, well, what I'm interested to hear, where is the failure of the model, right? Because it was teased as, the model doesn't work. And I looked at it and said, well, people seem to fail to apply the model at level 3 and 4. People don't understand level 2, like you mentioned, So I will ask you, since you created a model, do you feel that the problem tends to be in the application of models, or fundamental problems with the models themselves?
Well, first of all, if a model is repeatedly misapplied, do we have a problem with the model? My answer is yes.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Like ADDIE, right? ADDIE wasn't originally thought of as a waterfall model. They talked about iterating, right? The people that created it. But you look at the model, it pushes all of us to think it's a waterfall model, even though it doesn't have to be. So our models send messages. They nudge people's thinking, like in the behavioral economic sense. So a good model, what it ought to do is it ought to push us away from bad thinking and bad actions. It should push us toward good thinking and good actions. And the 4-level model's problem is that it doesn't get us to think about what good learning evaluation looks like. And we default to bad knowledge checks when if a model wanted to encourage us to think more reasonably about learning evaluation, it would nudge us to think about, we could also measure decision making. We could also measure task performance.
Right.
We could also take into account that people forget. And then if we measure right at the end of learning, that's not a good design, because that's measuring people's comprehension when everything's top of mind. That's not going to tell us about whether they're going to forget. So a good evaluation model ought to remind us that maybe we ought to delay some of our metrics to find out if the learning design helped people remember. So a model ought to do all these things LTEM is free, by the way. There's an LTEM report that goes along with it, 52 pages. That's free. It talks about 16 ways that people are using LTEM framework. But it also goes into the messaging the model is intended to have, the nudging that, has a list of all the messaging or nudging that a good evaluation model should have. And it says, this is what LTEM tries to provide. Now, it can't provide everything. So, for example, look at the name. It's the Learning Transfer Evaluation Model. So we're going to measure learning transfer. We're going to look at learning, but it doesn't focus on performance support. That's a completely different thing. So it does have some boundary conditions, but it's sweeping It's sweeping the world. I have anecdotal evidence. When I was at Tier 1 Performance, we did a global survey and we asked people, this is an open-ended question, what learning evaluation frameworks are you using in your organization? And 38%, and they came up with these on their own. There was no list. 38% people said the Kirkpatrick framework, and 27% said LTEM. And so you can see that it's rising in popularity throughout the world. It's been used by the CDC during the Ebola outbreak. It's got a lot of resonance now.
Yeah, and for those that are stupid like me, the first time that I heard L10 model. I was looking everywhere. What is this L10? Must be 10 components of learning. This sounds great. I can't wait to look through this. So it took me like 4 times before I had to go like, wait, what is like L10? So if anybody else is stupid like me, it's LTEM, not L10. It's not an L10 model. It's an LTEM model. Since a lot of this is a podcast, I wanted to make sure that those that couldn't read the lips and make that small distinction. But
thank you for that.
You're right, Will. It is.
There is an organization in our field called L10. It's the Life Sciences Training and Education Network. And I've spoken there about L10, and we have a little chuckle because I said, well, it's not.
Yeah, but you're right. That it is a really good model. And, I do hear it come up a ton, and as you mentioned, it's free. Like it's out there. Definitely go look at it, review it. It is much more, I think, personally, much more hands-on, easier to use. Like I think it does. You mentioned, if everybody fails to apply the model correctly, where does the fault lie there? This one, I think it leaves a little bit less room for doubt when it comes to like how do I apply this? And I mean, as you can tell from what when Will was talking about in the book, it's much more hands-on, practical. So I think you'll really appreciate that.
Well, and every model can be misapplied. I will say in the most recent version of LTEM, it's a 1-page framework, and now I've added on the back page helpful hints.
Okay.
So these helpful hints say, hey, it has 8 tiers, but whatever you do, don't measure all 8 tiers. That's way too much of an investment, So anyway, there's helpful hints to go along with it.
Wonderful. Well, Will, thank you so much for joining this podcast. It's been a great time. Really appreciate you investing your time to come talk to us. Those, definitely go out, check out the book, CEO's Guide to Training, eLearning, and Work. And also check out the LTEM model. Both of those, I think, will guide you down the journey quite a bit further. Well, thank you, Will, for joining. Pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Nolan. This was fun.